When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. Okay, folks, welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast. And today, it's hard to get Elijah Sean because, as you guys know, in the bodyguard world, you guys all know who Elijah is. And he's wrote a couple books. He's been published author, and he's a busy guy. And right now we're getting out of COVID, so I luckily got some time with Elijah wherever he's at, traveling around. So welcome aboard, Elijah. Glad to have you on the show.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me. I'm a listener to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, so being able to be on this side of it, I consider it an honor. Thank you.
Hey, honor's mine, sir. Honor's mine. We got to share some time at the Close Protection Conference with Byron Rogers and Christian West and the whole crew over there. And,
Sure.
It's exciting for me to see this whole industry evolve, Elijah, because I know it's given me so much. I mean, I come from Southern Oregon. They called me when I first moved to LA. They called me the Oregon Lumberjack because I showed up my first EP job wearing blue jeans and a flannel shirt, and tennis shoes, and a baseball cap.
Okay.
I kid you not. And I'm like, okay, dressed like a cop, I thought it was in style because that's what we wore in Oregon.
Sure.
And the detail, he goes, take Mark shopping at Macy's down in San Bernardino, the shopping mall. I kid you not. I think I spent $200 on clothes that was more appropriate in Southern California.
I get it.
But that was my first break in. I had my first interview down there. I left Oregon, not knowing anybody in California.
Okay.
And that's how I broke in. I had the military background, the reserve cop background, and the EP side was a different animal. We actually had the client had confirmed threats from the Mexican cartel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was like, holy crap. And I was actually being surveyed by these blacked out Hondas driving around us, checking us out, taking pictures. I'm like, what's going on? Why are they taking pictures of me with their cell phone? I had no idea.
You got thrown into it, huh?
Oh, baptism by fire. I was scared. Many times I was scared because I had one of the suspects, person of interest, actually followed me a few times in his car. And I was in my own POV, or I was in a rental car, and he spotted me. So he started following me through town. I'm like, what the heck? Am I going to get shot? And he actually parked next to me and sized me up. And then I saw something metal in his hand pointing in my direction. I'm like, oh, crap. And I would never forget that moment because I had the hairs in my back of my neck standing up going,
Sure.
What the hell is about ready to happen to me? Am I going to get shot? This guy is part of the cartel. I'm like, but that was a defining moment that opened my eye to there's real threats out there.
For sure. And, and that's one of the things that I try and get across to people that are interested in getting into the industry is, sure, there's some glamour to it, or, I call it some sizzle, some things that are aspirational and, it looks cool on the outside, but it's a really serious job. And, if we don't do it right, we could damage our reputation. We could damage the client's reputation. And of course, in very serious encounters, you could put yourselves in harm's way, just like the story you talked about. So yourself or your client. So, it is really something that we do have to take serious.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've been in the business probably 15 years, and I can name a few people that I've worked with that raised my level of excellence in the business. I have to give a shout out to Michael Trott, former CI guy. Nice. He was leading a team with a high net worth royal family of the Middle East. That was a 2-month-long detail, but I saw what leadership looked like. Nice. And then got around to Clark International, Dan Clark, and him and Juan Gonzalez, former Navy SEAL. And I saw how they ran a tight ship. And the corporate stuff and the family stuff, they're two different worlds.
Sure.
And it challenged me to understand culture. You're dealing with the royal family, I'm sure you work many royal families. There's a pecking order. If you don't know that pecking order, you're done in the first 2 days because it's like going through boot camp.
Sure.
Understanding culture shock. They treat you like the what they call the redhead
stepchild.
Exactly.
Sure.
And you're treated like that for 2 to 3 weeks to see if you'll last. It's a game to them.
Right.
And that's how royal families operate.
There's a form of hazing,
Yes.
And the thing that I say is you have to understand politics. And we're not talking about Democrat, Republican politics. We're talking about those internal politics that happen in these circles. And to your point, particularly when you're dealing with another culture, you have to get the lay of the land versus just jumping right in And it's so much of it is the observation piece. Your show is called The Fearless Mindset. So much of it is having the proper mindset, which is, let me learn the environment first before I go in and try and impose my will.
Exactly. And the mistake I see so many, let's call them experienced former cops, they want to impose their will on the staff, and then you have this collision that takes place.
Absolutely.
That staff, those nannies have been around those kids for 20 years.
For sure.
They're like their family. You're not going to do anything to jeopardize that connection that they have of trust within the parents that know that, the Mannies. And I see it happening. I mean, when I was with Michael Trott, I think that we went through 50 to 60 different agents in 2 weeks. But as the ego versus service mentality, I think, on that detail.
Absolutely. And, to your point, it is the mindset, because if you're coming from that law enforcement background, you're used to, throwing your weight around, having the color of the badge, that authority. And as you transition into that private sector, particularly if you're working in in an environment with these high net worth individuals, they don't want to hear the word no. They don't want anybody to tell them what to do. So then it becomes, the fine art of verbal judo. We can still influence them, be able to get the security apparatus that we need in place, but without being so heavy-handed. And so that's kind of that skill, which is a soft skill, that a lot of people that are making that transition from law enforcement, from the military, or just from some of these high-speed details, that are in these high-threat environments, you have to kind of tailor it back, adjust it, throttle it back some, and again, understand the client and the client type that you're working with.
That culture school that they put you through is, for me, it lasted probably after about the second week.
Okay.
They started inviting you to eat lunch.
Sure.
It take about a week, 2 weeks before they fill you out. Otherwise, they didn't even talk to you. It's usually the kid that you're with and say, "Hey, where's Mark? Where's security? Have security come." Then they started inviting you. But is that what you found? It took about 2 weeks for them to get comfortable with you?
Well, I think it varies, but there's definitely a breaking in period. And for sure, in the beginning, they're intentionally not speaking to you. They're intentionally giving you the cold shoulder, and they're seeing, what your reaction is. Are you going to be able to, kind of go through this period of adjustment? Because why get attached to someone who's not going to be here the next week because, they're going to put their foot in their mouth. They're going to do some cultural faux pas or something, and so and I understand that, but in the beginning, and I always kind of say this, no matter what, no matter how much experience or years you have in the job, in the beginning, you're always the new guy. You're always going to feel like the freaking new guy. So you just got to pay your dues. You just got to put yourself in that environment, approach it with humility and with an eye on the big picture. I'll get through this because on the other side of this, I'll make myself invaluable. There was a client, and I can share at least a little part of the story, a high net worth family. And my first trip with them, we went international. And it was to a major sporting event. It was the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, China. The Olympics is going on right now. And I work with the family. Again, there was that kicking the tires period. I played my position, but they respected me. At the end of the trip, one of the family members decided they were going to stay in China. They wanted to spend a few more days in country. And they said, "Well, Elijah, you can fly back with the rest of the detail." And I said, "No, if you're going to stay here, I can stay here as well. The rest of the team can take the rest of the family back." And they said, "No, Elijah, I want to just spend some time by myself. I'm just going to hang out in the hotel and go to the restaurants." And I said, "No, I don't think it's a great idea." And so she goes, "Okay, well, then you're fired." At which point I say, "Well, if I'm fired, then I'll just stay I'll stay in the hotel as well in China."
Why not?
And it was interesting because the client didn't speak to me that entire day that they stayed in there. But after that, it was a kind of a test. It was to see where, okay, you were out here for 2 weeks. I'm sure you're tired. I'm sure you're beat. I'm sure you're ready to get on this first plane home and get your check. But my mentality was, if you're going to extend your trip, I would be doing you a disservice to leave you over here, particularly because, it was a challenging environment and the things that came with it. And so, I still work with this client. It's a long-term account. And so, again, that was 2008. And the client will actually tell the story like, oh yeah, Elijah, I fired him the first time we worked together. But I think, again, it's a matter of being able to take those punches to achieve your overall objective.
Great. Yeah. Great point. And I know you've been with a lot of celebrities. Would you say the celebrity industry is probably your biggest clientele at this point? Are you getting more in the corporate side now? A little crossover there too as well?
Well, I've always done crossover. I've always kind of had both feet in, and that's just speaking to the philosophy that I wanted to make this a long-term career. And to do that, I wanted to make sure it was always fresh and engaging. With that said, kind of the niche that I found myself in is working in the celebrity sector. And that's particularly because I kind of backed into the industry. So the first account I got, I was actually working with a celebrity client. But then over time, I just found that I could apply, what I consider these higher standards to that segment of the marketplace that, sometimes people think that's kind of a rough around the edges, or, all you are is a glorified babysitter, et cetera. But I think, just like with anything, if you go in there and you approach it with, again, the right mindset, if you go in there, treating it like, I'm going to do this job to the best of my ability and leave an impression, it will create longevity in that field. And so that's what I've always tried to do. And I think I've been fortunate enough to be able to have carved an area, a space in that segment of the marketplace. And so, now, those phone calls come to me as opposed to where I used to have to go and try and solicit them. And, and I think one of the things that I can say is, I'm in a position now where I turn down more work than I take, because I can be selective at it. But I think that's because I did a lot of the hard work on the front end.
Congratulations on that. That's not easy to do.
Thank you.
There's a lot of years. You've been at the business probably, what, 20 plus years now?
Yeah, least? This is actually year 31, which
congrats.
Which
wow.
makes me feel really old.
They're gonna start calling you Grandpa Elijah soon.
Yeah. I get Instagram messages from the guys. Some guys will see me and they've started calling me OG. Which I don't know if that's endearing or not, but I take it for what it's worth.
It is. That's a compliment. Yeah, I mean, I get calls. Hey, my buddy Tony Rodriguez, my partner down in LA, he goes, "Hey, Mark, you think you can stand in front of Wells Fargo Bank for 12 hours at 103-degree weather in Folsom, California?" I'm like, "No." I don't think my back could handle it. I think my knees would start doing the rubber thing and start shaking after 10.
Well, I think the one thing that we have to realize is that we are not invincible,
exactly,
and that everything has an expiration date.
Amen.
And so. And then the other piece is, work smarter, not harder. And so, as my career progresses, I spend a lot of time thinking about that, and I spend a lot of time building my team and putting people around me that can handle those log and those strenuous details and those demanding clients. And I think that's an important part of what we do, which is, as we accumulate this knowledge. Much the reason you probably have this podcast, as you accumulate this knowledge and these experiences, you want to share it with people, one, an aspirational sense, but the other so they don't make the same mistakes.
Absolutely. Now, have you seen yourself progress and evolve and grow into more of a businessman versus bodyguard in your growth and progression in the industry? When did you start seeing that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to, I tell people all the time, but particularly in the beginning, I understood the craft and I was able to constantly gain experience in the craft. But like so many people, I had that entrepreneurial spirit and, I wanted to start my own company. I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't have a strong business background. In fact, for college, I went to film school. So we definitely weren't, focused on the economics of it, et cetera. So what I mean is that I on a regular basis, I call it taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So I had to learn the craft and talk about the world of business. Now, one of the fortunate things is, and this is kind of the cool thing about our profession, as you know, is as long as you keep your eyes and your ears open, you can absorb a lot of things. And so again, I would go with clients and they would go to these meetings where they're talking to people that are, titans in their field and experts in their respective lanes, these successful businessmen and women. And so I'm listening. And so I would pick up those things. And that's still part of my process now. I'll find myself in these boardroom meetings. And again, if there's something that I could take away, it out of an industry that's unrelated to mine, if I can mine it for a couple of jewels, I will, and I'll apply that. And so it's definitely been a journey. I definitely learned a lot of things along the way, particularly as it related to business. At one point I thought, the American dream, I just wanted to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that meant getting more staff, but getting more staff meaning now I'm under the gun to get more accounts, and getting more accounts mean you have to get more staff, which means more overhead. And what I realized was I wasn't enjoying the job anymore because I was so busy focused on this hamster wheel, to get larger. And I had a moment of clarity. And at that point there, I said, well, what's the important thing? I really love what I do. I need, this equation here will get me the number that I'm comfortable with to keep the lights on and make sure that I'm financially comfortable. And at that point there, anything else is just extra. And so when I realized that, I actually scaled back the business, and fortunately that was around the time when things were turning virtual anyway. You remember when, at one point everybody wanted this big office. If you didn't have an office with, conference room table, you weren't making it. But, the world, and particularly now, because like you mentioned, we're coming out of this COVID thing where people are just, everybody's remote now. But, several years ago, a decade ago, when I decided that, I travel most of the year anyway. I travel internationally about 70% of the year. So if I'm traveling all this time, why do I need to spend thousands on an office that I'm not already in? And so again, as I restructured, as I scaled down, as I picked up a staff that were adapted, working remotely, things like that, it really helped me, and it allows me to do what I enjoy to do. And so again, I still work operationally in the field. A couple of days a week I devote to just being in the office, and whether the office means a conference room at a hotel where I'm just working on paperwork, but it's manageable, and it's in a manner that I enjoy, and allows me to, again, the work we do, we take it seriously, but I still find enjoyment from it. So I'm able to do it that way.
Elijah, here's a question from a business perspective. Mm-hmm. What have you had to learn about yourself in being a successful business owner? Did you have, like for me, I learned from the Marine Corps, there's so much strength in delegation, knowing your weakness and finding that guy's strength in your weakness to make yourself a stronger team. When were you able to accept that in your career and say, okay, I suck at numbers, let's bring in a guy that's a good CFO, or I suck at spreadsheets, let's get that girl that's a spreadsheet queen. Sure. When in your career did you figure that out, that in order to do that, you had to be successful, you had to make that move?
Well, I got to say, you stole my answer, actually. And, unlike the majority of people in my profession, I didn't come from law enforcement or the military. And even when you say that, when you learned that in the Marine Corps, yes. Because I wasn't in the Marine Corps, I didn't learn that piece until later. So, and I say all to say is that the delegation piece, I think, I had a tendency to want to make sure that everything was perfect, which is great to have, to set the bar high and want to make sure that you achieve that. But as I grew, there's things that I'm deficient in. And so I needed to make sure that I had people around me that were great, that they could pick up all of those areas that I was, not as good in. And then be able to go hands off at times. And so to avoid micromanaging. And it's something that, again, I still have to do these checks and balances, and, some of my team know, and I go, hey, I'll be over telling them something. And then I go, wait a minute, what am I talking about? You got this. And so that's something I had to learn along the way. And again, it's something that I learned, but part of that is, as protectors, we've got this kind of an innate quality, where we want to have our hands in things. We think we know the solution to a problem, but sometimes the solution of a problem is letting someone else solve it. And again, if you can put the right people around you, you don't have those issues. And to your point there, when you talk about even just the accounting thing, I'm not a numbers guy.
No, I'm not either.
I'm not a numbers guy. And as I track the progression of my career, one of the roles that's always by me is someone who's very strong in the numbers and who I can trust.
Exactly.
There's a gentleman, you might have met him at the conference. Again, he was right there on my side. His name is Sam Alicia. And and Sam, he runs my operations. And part of that is just is one, because he's very good at certain areas that I'm not good at.
Sure.
But the other part is the trust piece. And I know for some people it's difficult to trust people. For me, it's easy for me to trust people if they're operating at a high degree of excellence. And if I get that, until you give me a reason not to, we don't have an issue. And so stacking the deck, putting people around me that I think can help support and have the same outlook and goals and aspirations. I think that's the thing that I had to learn. But once I understood the concept, now I just keep making sure I kind of reinforce it.
Wow. So audience, you're listening to this. If you want to start a business, there are some golden nuggets. You just got a 30-minute MBA course from Elijah Shaw himself on how to have success in owning a business in the EP industry. It's not easy, as Elijah just explained. It's very complicated. Because so many. Go ahead.
I was just going to say from an entrepreneur, and again, this is me saying this because when I worked for corporations, I worked for small businesses. I did a whole lot of things on my path to get where I was going to start the company. When I started the company, I started in October of 1998. When I started my company, I was fortunate enough to have a client already in my back pocket. So I had when I left the company, the last company I was with, I had a 2-year non-compete agreement. I honored that agreement, but the account that I had developed basically waited for me to start my own business. And so I had that in my back pocket, and that kept me afloat. But everything else I had to learn, and I had to teach myself these things that you don't have to worry about when you're just receiving a paycheck, when you're just, the operator who's, the agent who's out in the field. And so I gained a respect for that really quickly, to the behind the scene things, to make sure that I appreciated the people that help keep the lights on. I might be the forward face of my organization, but there are a lot of people behind the scenes that move things around to make that part happen. And so that's something that if I could, again, give a gem or give a bit of advice to some people is you're not going to know it all. So spend your time trying to put people around you, build that trust, build that relationship, build that knowledge base. And as you guys, as that high tide rises all boats, you guys can all grow together.
Amen to that. And I learned that the hard way. I mean, I jokingly say, I've been in the business probably 15 years, I think it is now. Mm-hmm. And I jokingly say, I think I've had probably a dozen funerals, personally, because people, as you get successful and people request you, they're going to hate you. And you look at Tom Brady, Michael Jordan,
sure, some
of the most iconic images, people on the planet, they've all had haters. And, take that as a compliment. Mm-hmm. If people are hating on you on Facebook, social media, it's a compliment. Don't get mad. Just a compliment. And I also learned in business, you got to have general counsel to protect you from the haters. I learned that from different people, just watching and studying different organizations out there. Mm-hmm. General counsel is worth the investment because if somebody's going to attack you and they know you have general counsel on board, they're going to think twice about it.
Well, I love what you just said there, you said you learned this from other organizations, from other entities, from other industries. And I think that's so great because a lot of times, particularly us in the security field, we might only just focus on security. How to shoot, martial arts, all these things. But in the world, there are all these other fields and if we can, grasp, the fruits of the jewels and the gems from these other industries and then apply it to our own, we'd find success. So I think that's a great philosophy, a great mindset to have. I spent a lot of times, and which is how I found originally, I think we talked about this once, how I found your podcast was not a security related podcast. I listen to a lot of things. I think I was listening to TED Talk, and at the bottom, Apple Podcasts recommended yours.
Wow.
You might like this based off of what you listen to. And you've got a really strong cover photo, by the way.
Thank you.
And that's also something that just drew me to it, the artwork. So anyway, I have to say is that, if I would have spent my time just listening to security things, just listening to, things about shooting or terrorism or something, yeah, I might be an expert in that field, but it's also limiting me in other aspects.
Yeah, Elijah, that's interesting because I've always been an inquisitive mind. I mean, after I got out of college, I told myself I would never read another book. But I hated studying, and I hated studying with a passion. I don't even know how I graduated from college, to be honest with you. But I just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But what I did find myself is going over to Barnes & Noble and to the business category, Inc. magazine, Forbes, and I'd be studying. I could read like 4 or 5 pages of somebody successful, and I just study that. I got to do it because it's only 4 or 5 chapters, or 4 or 5 pages of an article,
or something. Yeah, sure.
Versus a book.
Yeah.
And so I have so much respect for you because you've authored 2 books now.
Well, thank you for that. I'll tell you, much like you, I don't know how the heck I graduated, but and then also, I was fortunate enough, to be able to again call myself a published author now, but I went into that kicking and screaming as well. I had these things in my head, and I had individuals like Mark James from Panther Protection Services, Bob Dugan, ESI, and Dale June. And Dale L. June is a prolific writer. He's an educator. He wrote Introduction to Executive Protection, which was the first book in the industry that I got. And so when we started a relationship, I was inspired by him in terms of how much he could write. And I go, I could never do anything like that.
Sure.
And then again, with the encouragement of these guys, they said, yo, you can do it if you just, a page a day, think about, even if it took you a year, you'd get 365 pages done. And so, when I jumped off of that ledge there and made it happen, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, which was get that first book out. And fortunately, again, I had someone like Dale to kind of mentor me, and people like Mark in the background to be able to give me some wisdom and come from hindsight, because they were published authors. But it was quite the experience. Everybody keeps saying, when's the next time I'm writing a book? And I keep pushing that off quite a bit. But I got it out there. I got it into the marketplace, and knock on wood, it's been well received.
We have now officially 2 books. You're author. Are you co-author or just author?
No, I'm co-author. So both of those books. So again, Dale L. June is the guy who's my mentor, and so when I was writing the book, I asked him if he would write the book with me. And
nice.
So because again, published author, he was able to help me with the structure of the book, help me find my voice, all of those things. And I got a lot of respect for him. Dale wrote this book I mentioned. So the first book I wrote was Introduction to Celebrity Protection.
Right.
It was a guide to mastering the business of VIP with the emphasis on touring, because people that are really interested in that segment of the marketplace. So Dale helped me write that. After that book came out, I found out that Dale's book, which was Introduction to Executive Protection, his book was going out of print with the publisher that he had. And I really strongly encouraged Dale. I said, we need to have this book back in print, and I encouraged him to do a 4th edition of the book. And he asked me if I would contribute a few chapters to it. So the second book is really his baby, whereas the first book was my baby.
Nice.
And I'm just contributing it, helping give it a fresh coat of paint. And I'm a fan of guerrilla marketing, so I was able to kind of put those resources behind it as well. And I think that just came out about 6 months ago, 5 months ago, and again, it hit the a couple bestsellers list. So I'm happy to say that, and again, I'm happy that Dale's book continues to live on.
Congratulations on that. That's not easy to do. That's a lot of
Thank you.
discipline, consistency, and just being consistent and daily write something, put it together. And I commend a lot of respect to you and Mike Trout, and many other authors that we have in our industry that have stuck to it. Because I know for me, I'm more of an audio guy, but I know there's a lot of guys that it just helps you. What I'm hearing, it opens up a lot of opportunity to speak once you have that under your hat.
Well, if I can, I'll share something with you, and this is something that Mark James actually, I think, was the person that told me about it. You know, you do a podcast on the regular, so you talk about a ton of things, you know, a lot of different subjects, these areas that you have intimate knowledge of, and have thought about. You know, if you just took those recordings and transcribed them, you've got the makings of a book. Then it's just fleshing it out. And again, that was something that Mark said, because I'm a very visual person. You know, if you give me talking, I can talk about things, but I never saw myself as writing things down. And so the basis of my first book, An Introduction to Celebrity Protection, the first thing we did was, as I gave the different lectures when I teach at the courses, we recorded those, transcribed those, and that gave me the basis of my book. It gave me words on the page, and then it was just a matter of structuring it and making it sound good for the audience in a different medium, the printed page versus me sitting in front of you and talking at you. So you know, I would encourage you, because I can tell that, you know, you have a way of communicating that people want to listen to. You know, they engage with your podcast, they engage with you on social media. You know, take those things and put them in book form. And yeah, it does create other opportunities. And the one thing is, you know, in the new age, you know, media is very disposable. People want things very quickly, and then they move on to the next thing. The one thing about a book is, once it's there, once it's in print, it lives. It'll, you know, the fact that, you know, people are buying my book, and, you know, they'll send me pictures in Italy and
wow,
even in Russia, cool. You know, yeah, it's extremely cool. So to know that, you know, 30 years from now, it'll still be sitting on someone's shelf or in a library, you know, I think that's pretty cool.